It was just another rainy evening in Seattle, the kind where the clouds hung low and the streets shimmered under the soft glow of the streetlights. People were going about their business, umbrellas up, jackets zipped tight, and the steady patter of rain created a rhythm that was almost comforting. But then something strange happened. The calm of the city was suddenly interrupted by a deep, rumbling hum that seemed to roll through the sky like thunder, but without any lightning. It didn't feel natural. It wasn't a sound anyone recognized. People looked up, expecting to see storm clouds moving in, but instead they saw something that made them freeze where they stood. Above the iconic Space Needle, the clouds began to swirl in a way that defied weather patterns. It was as if something was pushing through from above, or maybe from beyond. A glowing, oval-shaped craft slowly descended, cloaked in soft blue and green lights that pulsed rhythmically. It wasn't loud, but it felt powerful, like it was humming with energy. It hovered silently for a few seconds above the needle, casting a strange reflection across the wet rooftops and windows. No one moved. It was as if the entire city was holding its breath. Cars stopped in the streets. People came out of shops and restaurants, some with phones already recording, others too stunned to even lift their hands. A few children pointed toward the sky, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. And while the craft didn't make any sudden moves, its very presence demanded attention. It was clear to everyone watching. This wasn't from here. It wasn't a drone or a plane. It was something else entirely. Then, as if to confirm everyone's thoughts, a small beam of light shot down from the bottom of the craft and touched the pavement in a quiet square just a few blocks away. The light wasn't blinding, more like a gentle spotlight. And within seconds, a figure emerged from that beam, all smooth, skinned, and definitely not human. It didn't look threatening, but it also didn't look like anything anyone had seen before. It stood still, as though adjusting to this new world it had just stepped into. People whispered, some ran. Others stayed rooted in place, unable to look away. The rain didn't even seem to touch the figure. It was like it existed slightly outside of the rules the rest of the world had to follow. A few brave souls tried to approach, only to be gently held back by police who were quickly setting up a perimeter. The scene was rapidly becoming the center of the world's attention. And yet, despite the growing crowd, the flashing lights of approaching news vans, and the blare of sirens in the distance, the figure didn't move. It simply stood there in the quiet, watching, waiting. The hum from the ship above continued, almost like it was singing a low lullaby to the city beneath it. In that moment, something became very clear. This was not a hostile arrival. This wasn't an invasion or an attack. It felt more like a message, or maybe an invitation. Everyone who witnessed it would later describe the same feeling, not fear, not panic, but wonder, a shared awareness that the world had just changed, and they had been there to see the first moment of it. It all began on that quiet, rainy night when something beyond Earth chose Seattle as its first point of contact. That same night, the rain hadn't stopped for hours. It drizzled steadily, soaking rooftops, trickling down window panes, and pooling in small puddles across the sidewalks. The city had settled into its usual rhythm, people winding down in coffee shops, reading under warm lights, or walking quickly to catch the last bus home. But something about the atmosphere felt different, as if the air itself had thickened. The rain, though gentle, now seemed to echo more sharply against surfaces, and a low vibration, almost too subtle to notice, began to pulse through the streets. At first, most people didn't think much of it. Maybe a transformer humming or distant construction. But then the lights began to change. Street lamps, traffic signals, and even neon signs began to flicker. first irregularly, then in what felt like patterns. Some blinked rapidly, others dimmed and brightened as if being controlled by something unseen. It was enough to draw attention, enough to pull heads up from phones and conversations. In neighborhoods across the city, people stepped out onto porches and balconies, looking toward the sky. And that's when the real strangeness began. Above the clouds, bursts of light started to appear, not like lightning. They were slower, almost deliberate. Blues, greens, and purples shimmered in the sky, forming shapes that dissolved and then reformed. One moment, they resembled rings or spirals. The next, they moved like ribbons of energy stretching across the night. It wasn't something nature could explain, and yet it was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe. The colors didn't just light up the sky. They moved through it like they were alive. Some people began filming, others simply stared. The sounds followed not long after, low tones that didn't come from any direction but seemed to surround you. They weren't loud, but they were deep, like the sound of a distant horn underwater or a temple bell struck far away. You didn't just hear them, you felt them in your chest. The sound would rise and fall slowly, like breathing, sinking with the lights above. It was hypnotic, unsettling, yes, but more mesmerizing than frightening. A group gathered near a small park downtown where the sky was most visible between the buildings. Strangers stood side by side, drawn together by the shared experience. No one was talking much. There wasn't anything to say. Some people held umbrellas, some didn't bother. Everyone was looking up. The rain continued to fall, but it felt secondary to what was happening above. In a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, an elderly couple watched the lights through their front window. They said it reminded them of the aurora borealis they'd once seen in Alaska, but even that paled in comparison to this. The lights seemed to respond to one another like they were communicating. The patterns shifted whenever someone made a sound, clapped, or called out. It was like the sky was listening. Elsewhere, a group of teenagers on a rooftop began shouting up at the lights, laughing nervously. But their laughter faded when one of the lights shot downward in a slow arc, disappearing just behind the buildings downtown. A quiet hush fell over the city in that moment. The sounds from above paused for several long seconds. No more pulsing hum, no flickering lights, just the rain and the silence. Then from a distance came a glow, a soft beam rising back toward the sky like a response. It didn't last long, just a few seconds. But it was enough. People started to move toward it. Something was happening there, something close. News helicopters were now circling overhead, and their spotlights only made the otherworldly glow more noticeable. Emergency sirens blared in the distance, and police began arriving to manage the growing crowds. But no one was running, no one was panicking. People just wanted to see it, whatever it was. That strange night, the lights, the sound, the way everything felt just slightly outside reality. It would be remembered by everyone. It wasn't just a weather anomaly or a random electrical issue. It was something else, something bigger, and the rain kept falling, as if trying to remind everyone that even during extraordinary moments, the world keeps turning. In one of the quieter neighborhoods just a few blocks from the city center, a teenager named Mia was watching the entire scene unfold from her bedroom window. She had always been more curious than cautious, a trait that often got her into trouble, but also made her notice things others didn't. The moment the lights started flickering and the strange humming filled the air, she felt a chill run down her spine, not out of fear but anticipation. Something was happening, and she could feel it pulling her. She grabbed her jacket, stuffed a flashlight and her phone into her backpack, and slipped out the back door before her parents could even ask what was going on. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the sky above was still alive with movement. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, only that it wasn't going to be found from behind a window. As she crept through the streets, she kept her hood low, trying to blend in with the small groups of neighbors who had gathered in clusters, talking in hushed voices about the lights and sounds. But Mia wasn't interested in gossip. Her eyes scanned the sky, then the ground, and finally landed on something that made her heart stop. Near the edge of the park, past a row of empty picnic tables and tall hedges, she spotted it, the figure from the ship. It stood silently near the trees, tall and still, as though it was observing everything around it. People hadn't noticed it yet, too distracted by what was still happening above. Mia stepped behind a bench, her breath catching. She couldn't look away. The figure moved with slow, deliberate steps, not rushed, not nervous, just curious, like it was exploring. She watched as it walked toward the deeper part of the park, away from the crowds, disappearing behind a line of trees near the water's edge. Most people were still focused on the glowing sky, phones pointed upward, voices full of wonder and confusion. No one saw the visitor move, no one except Mia. Something inside her clicked. She had to follow. Not out of recklessness, but because every part of her was telling her this moment would never come again. Quietly, carefully, she stepped off the path and into the shadows beneath the trees, keeping just enough distance not to be seen, but close enough not to lose sight of the figure. The deeper she followed, the quieter the world became. The sounds from the city faded until all she could hear was the soft splash of water nearby and the rhythmic dripping of rain from the branches above. The visitor didn't seem to notice her, or maybe it did and didn't care. It stopped several times to look around, as if taking in the trees, the lights, the way water ran down the leaves. Mia was struck by how calm it was. Not like the aliens in movies. No weapons, no force, just presence. Pure, silent presence. At one point, it reached out and touched a tree trunk gently, holding its hand there for a few seconds before moving on. Mia stood frozen, watching every move. She wanted to record it, to capture this moment forever, but her instincts told her not to, not yet. Something about the moment felt sacred, and she didn't want to ruin it with the artificial click of a phone camera. The figure eventually came to a small clearing near a pond, where it knelt beside a bush, as though inspecting the flowers. It moved so fluidly, so peacefully, that Mia began to feel less like a follower and more like a witness. She wasn't just watching an alien visitor. She was watching something intelligent, something alive and aware, interact with the earth for the first time. And for that moment, it wasn't about fear or mystery. It was about quiet understanding. She stepped on a stick by accident, and the sound cracked through the quiet like thunder. The figure turned. For the first time, it looked directly at her. Her heart pounded, frozen in place. But instead of reacting with aggression, it simply tilted its head, the way someone might when they're curious. Then it stood turned slowly and continued walking into the mist. Mia didn't follow this time. She just stood there, rain gathering on her hood, breath shaking, realizing she had just shared something no one else had, a moment that could never be explained, only felt. It was just moments after the silent exchange in the clearing. Mia hadn't moved. Her shoes were soaked, the cold slowly creeping through her jacket, but she didn't care. She had seen something no one else had, and somehow she knew it wasn't over yet. The figure had vanished into the mist, but something urged her forward, like an invisible thread pulling her deeper into the park. Following carefully, she stepped through the wet underbrush until she saw a faint glow ahead. It wasn't bright, more like the soft light of moonlit water. She moved closer, cautiously, until she saw the visitor again. This time it was standing beside the pond, facing her, not running, not hiding. Waiting, Mia hesitated, then stepped into the open, heart pounding. The air between them buzzed gently, not with noise, but with awareness. She didn't know how to explain it, but she felt it clearly. Something passed between them. Not fear, not a warning, just permission. Then came the voice, not with lips moving, but directly into her thoughts. It wasn't loud or mechanical. It was calm, like a soft echo in her mind, perfectly clear. "You are not afraid." Mia froze. She didn't understand how, but she knew the voice wasn't her own. It wasn't speaking English exactly, but the meaning formed instantly inside her head, like translation beyond language. She swallowed and nodded. "I should be," she whispered, "but I'm not." The visitor stepped forward, not threatening, just closer. Its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed faintly like deep ocean lights. "We do not come to harm. We listen. We observe your world. It is beautiful. It is in danger." Mia's breath caught. She wanted to ask what kind of danger. Was it war, pollution, something else? But before she could form the words, the voice continued. "You have power, too much, but not balance. We have seen others. Worlds that burned before they learned to listen. We are here to help prevent this." She stared at the figure, trying to make sense of it. "Not invasion, not control, prevention. Why now?" she asked. "Why us?" "You are at the tipping point. We came before, long ago, watched, waited, but now your voice reaches stars. Your tools shape your planet faster than nature can heal it. We chose this place, your city, because its sound reaches furthest, its frequency is kind." Mia didn't know what to say. She didn't fully understand the meaning of it all, but somehow the truth in it felt undeniable. She had always sensed that the earth was rushing, technology growing faster than wisdom, and now here was someone, something, confirming it in a way she never thought possible. "We do not speak to leaders," the voice said. "We speak to listeners, those who see without fear." She looked up at the visitor, feeling the weight of the moment settle in her chest. It wasn't just an alien encounter. It was a message, one that wasn't meant for power or politics, but for people, for hearts. "Will you come back?" she asked. "We never left." The glow around the figure pulsed once, then slowly dimmed. It turned and walked back toward the trees. This time there was no beam, no sound, just the soft rustle of branches as the figure faded into the fog. Mia stood alone, the pond behind her, the lights of the city now barely visible through the trees. The rain had finally stopped, and the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was full of meaning, full of purpose, full of the kind of understanding that changes a person. That night the sky had opened. But it was this quiet conversation, just a teenager and a visitor, that revealed what truly mattered. The quiet didn't last. As Mia stood alone at the edge of the pond, still processing everything she'd just heard, those words that weren't really spoken, but somehow more real than anything, she began to feel a new kind of pressure in the air. Not the kind that comes before a storm. This was heavier, urgent. She looked up. Somewhere beyond the trees, the steady whir of helicopter blades sliced through the silence. Then came the distant thuds, boots hitting pavement, vehicle doors slamming, radios crackling. Whatever peaceful stillness had filled the clearing only moments ago was now being swallowed by a different kind of energy. She ducked behind a large bush, heart racing. It wasn't fear of the visitor. She had already felt its calm, its reason for coming. This fear was different. It was the kind that came from knowing what people do when they don't understand something. Voices grew louder, flashlights cut through the trees. A sharp, commanding tone called out orders, not questions. Mia could make out phrases like secure the area, confirm visual contact, and non-human entity confirmed. The sound of metal clanking and footsteps moving quickly across the clearing made her stomach tighten. They were close now, too close. She saw them before they saw her. 4 agents in black uniforms, each wearing headsets and carrying equipment that looked far too advanced for a routine operation. Their eyes scanned everything. They weren't looking to observe. They were here to control, to capture. The alien figure, still standing near the water's edge, didn't move. It made no effort to flee or hide. It simply turned toward the approaching figures and stood tall, as if ready to speak again. But this time no words came. The agents raised their weapons, not guns but strange-looking devices that hummed with energy. One of them shouted something unintelligible, possibly a command in code. The others spread out, forming a semicircle. Mia clenched her fists, staying low. Every part of her wanted to scream, to run out and stop them. They didn't know what she knew. They didn't feel what she had felt. All they saw was a threat, a thing, something unknown that needed to be controlled. She had to do something, but what could she do? The visitor raised its hand slowly, palm open, not in defense, not to fight, just a gesture, an attempt to communicate again. But the agents didn't wait. One fired first. A beam of bright white energy shot out, wrapping around the visitor like a net of lightning. The figure stumbled slightly, not out of pain, it seemed, but surprise. A soft pulse of blue light pushed outward from its body, distorting the air like heat on pavement. One agent fell back, knocked off balance by the force, but the others advanced, shouting commands over their radios. Mia couldn't stay hidden any longer. She ran into the clearing, yelling, waving her arms. "Stop! It's not here to hurt anyone." The agents turned. One of them raised his hand, motioning for her to get back. Another shouted, "Get her out of here, civilian breach," but she didn't back down. She stepped in front of the visitor, arms spread wide. "You don't understand. It came in peace. It tried to tell me. It's not dangerous." The lead agent stepped forward, eyes scanning her face. "Do you have any idea what this is?" he asked coldly. Mia looked back at the figure behind her. Its glow was dimming, not out of fear, but as if it understood that its message had reached someone, that maybe, just maybe, one voice had been enough. "Yes," she said, "it's a warning and a gift, and if you take it by force, you'll never hear what it came to say." There was a moment of stillness. Even the agents seemed uncertain. Their weapons paused midair. The visitor raised its hand again, not at them, but to the sky. Above, a shimmer appeared in the clouds, and from it, a new beam of soft light began to descend, slowly forming a circle of pale blue. The figure turned to Mia one last time, and though no words came, she understood. This wasn't retreat. It was choice. Then, in a gentle swirl of light, it vanished into the beam. Silent, graceful, gone. All that was left was the hush that followed, the rain starting once again, and the sound of a city too loud to hear what mattered most. After the visitor vanished into the beam of light, the agents were left standing in confusion. Their orders had been clear, contain and secure, but the subject had left by its own choice, untouched, uncontained, and, perhaps worst of all for them, completely misunderstood. The clearing was quiet now, except for the low murmur of radios and the returning patter of rain. No one spoke to Mia. No one arrested her or pushed her aside. Maybe they were too stunned, or maybe, deep down, they had seen what she saw and didn't quite know how to face it. Mia walked home that night in silence. She didn't know how she was going to explain any of it. The lights, the sounds, the way the alien had spoken. Not through words, but through something deeper. She didn't even bother pulling out her phone. She hadn't recorded any of it, and somehow that felt right. This wasn't a moment to be broadcast. It was something meant to stay inside, to settle and grow quietly like a seed planted in the dark. Over the next few days, the world reacted as it always does. News stations replayed footage of the lights above Seattle. Scientists speculated, officials denied, theories flooded social media. Some people claimed it was a military experiment, others were sure it was a hoax. A few believed something real had happened, but they didn't agree on what. The truth, as it often does, got buried beneath noise, but something strange began happening in the days that followed. Something small, but undeniable. People started to listen differently. Mia noticed it first in the city parks. Strangers weren't just walking past each other. They were pausing, watching the sky, or sitting longer on benches without their phones. Conversations started to shift from the usual complaints about work or traffic to questions, real questions, like, do you think it really meant peace? Or what if we're not alone and we never were? Even her school felt different. Her classmates, who usually mocked anything weird or unexplainable, were now asking her what it had felt like to stand there in the clearing. She didn't give them everything. Some moments were still too sacred, but she told them what mattered. That it hadn't come to threaten or conquer, that it had tried to speak, and we, or at least some of us, had tried to listen. What really changed, though, wasn't in the sky or the stories being passed around. It was in the way people responded to one another. Mia noticed her parents arguing less and listening more. Her neighbors, who'd hardly exchanged more than small talk before, began inviting each other over for coffee. It was like the whole city had been reminded of something basic, something often forgotten in the rush of daily life, that communication isn't just about speaking, it's about understanding. Mia thought about the visitor often, not in fear or longing, but in reflection. It hadn't forced its message on anyone. It hadn't come with threats or ultimatums. It had simply observed, reached out, and waited for someone willing to receive what it offered. And in that, there was a lesson bigger than any message it could have spoken. Real understanding can't be taken. It has to be given, and it has to be received with willingness, not fear. What made that night unforgettable wasn't the lights, or the technology, or the dramatic arrival. It was the silence, the way something so powerful chose stillness over force, how it trusted one voice, one heart, to carry its message forward, and maybe that was the final twist. Everyone expected something loud, something dramatic. A declaration, a demand, a new law from the stars, but instead what we were given was something far more subtle, a mirror, a quiet reminder that our greatest challenge as a species may not be reaching the stars, but learning how to hear each other right here on Earth. Sometimes the most powerful messages are the ones spoken without a single word. Thank you for joining this unforgettable journey, a quiet night, a curious heart, and a message that changed everything. Let this story remind us, true understanding begins when we choose to listen, not just to words, but to intention. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and always keep your eyes open to the unexpected.